All right, physical science people. We are now on the inside of our naming booklet. There have been two previous videos to show you how to name ionic compounds, both with fixed and variable charge ions. Now we're opening things up to covalent compounds, okay? Remember that our covalent compounds that we're dealing with are normally when you have a nonmetal bonded to another nonmetal. All right, we have a different set of rules that apply to naming these, because these are covalent compounds, not ionic compounds. Now, some are similar, and that will be good. This video, we're going to do all at one time. There are a few more rules, but students tend to like naming covalent compounds a little bit better, even though there's a couple extra steps in here that you didn't have for ionic compounds on the outside. So let's get started, okay? This booklet opens up now, and we're going to be in one of three sections. There's the middle section here, where most of our rules will go. This column over here will be for what we call prefixes in just a little bit, and we'll write some of our examples over here on the right-hand side. Feel free to pause and re-watch at any point if you'd like, okay? Here's rule number one. When we are looking to name a covalent compound, the very first rule is almost identical to rule number one out here for ionic compounds. Out here, you write the name of the metal first. Since there's not a metal here, when you're looking at the compound, you just go ahead and write whichever element is listed first, straight from the periodic table, without changing the name at all, okay? So we're gonna put that rule as start with the name of the element listed first in the compound. All right, so to avoid some confusion, let's take a look at an example over here on the right-hand side. If we were looking to name the covalent compound of NO, there's no metal there. We have nitrogen and we have oxygen. And so we're just going to apply rule number one by naming the element listed first, which is nitrogen. And so in this case, we would just write nitrogen directly from the periodic table without changing it at all, okay? Rule number two is also going to sound familiar to you. You're going to take the second element and you're going to go ahead and add that IDE ending to the end of it, okay? To the end of the second element. So to continue with our example up here, oxygen here would become oxide, right? Oxygen goes to oxide. If we were naming the example of C and O, the second element here is also oxygen, so that oxygen becomes oxide. There's that IDE ending, all right? Those are almost identical to the first two rules of naming ionic compounds. They're the same for covalent, okay? Here's where things get a little bit different, and this, I'm not sure how you'll perceive this, but it's actually kind of a helpful and good thing. The third rule is we have to add prefixes to this. You're going to add a prefix to represent the number of atoms. Number of atoms. And so here's what we mean by that. Take a look at this example right here. If we have N2O5, whoops, sorry, that 5 should be down here, folks. Don't follow my example. Okay? When we apply rule number one, the name of the first element is nitrogen. So we would write nitrogen, okay? Rule number two says we take that second element, oxygen, and we add oxide, it becomes oxide, okay? The part that is brand new for us is adding a prefix. We have two nitrogens here. When we're naming covalent compounds, there has to be a prefix that tells us that there's actually two nitrogens right there. The prefix for two is di, D-I. And there's 5 oxygens here, and so we need a prefix that tells us how many oxygens are there. 5 is penta. Okay? So the full name is going to be dinitrogen pentaoxide. Man, we're sounding like chemists now. These prefixes, there's one for each of the first 10 numbers. There are more than that, but you only need to know the first 10. So we're going to use this column over here for our prefixes. I'm going to shift things over real quick. And we'll write a reminder of what each of the prefixes are going to be. So we'll list 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way to 10. And a lot of these also you've heard or picked up from previous classes, especially in your math class or biology class. The prefix for anything that is 1 is going to be mono. The prefix for 2, which we saw earlier, is going to be di, di. 3 is going to be tri. 4 is going to be tetra. 5, as we saw in our other example, is going to be penta. Okay. 6 is going to be hexa. 7 is similar. It's going to be hepta. Okay. 8 is octa. 9 is nano. And 10 is deca. Okay? If you put these in your naming booklet, you'll have them here to refer to every time you're going through step 3. You'll be able to add a prefix there. Okay? Now, there's one last step. And I got to be perfectly honest with you, I have no idea why this step is in here. I've never seen a really good explanation for it. All right? Rule number 4 says you get to drop the prefix or get rid of it or don't use it if the prefix, okay, on the first element is mono. Okay? The drop prefix on the first element if it is mono. Only on the first element, though. Okay? Only on the very first one. So, here are some examples. We use this space down here for our examples. I know this video is getting a little long, so we're going to go a little quicker here. CO2. There's no metals. No metals whatsoever. So we apply rule number 1, which is the name of the first element, carbon. Unchanged. Rule for the second element there is a non-metal, and so we're going to change oxygen to oxide. And rule number 3 says add a prefix for each one, all right? If it's 1 carbon, then you would normally put mono there, right? Some students will go ahead and put mono in there, and when we get to rule 4, we know we're going to drop that one, correct? But we'll leave it there for now and just pretend that we don't know what's coming, okay? There's 2 oxygens, and so we look for our prefix up here, and it's di, so this is going to be dioxide. And the very last rule, remember, if the prefix on the first element is mono, then we get to cross it off. We get to drop it. So this is carbon dioxide. Many of you know the name of this one prior to even going through the rules, but that's where the name actually comes from. Okay? Another quick example, if we have CO, we run through the same rules. First element is carbon, unchanged. The second element is oxygen, which gets changed to oxide. The third rule says add a prefix. I have 1 of each, and so I have mono here and monoxide there. That's our chemistry ear kicking in. It's not monooxide, it's monoxide. But then we're going to go ahead and cross off the mono right there. Okay? And that's how it works.